Hello there and welcome to episode 5 of the Rugby Nats Chat Show. We're going to mix things up a little bit tonight. We're going to start with a few things to talk about and then move on to the results towards the end. The first thing, Mike, have you read either in the papers or actually seen on the TV the article from Professor Pollock about children not being allowed to play rugby in schools?
Yeah, I have indeed, actually, and I find it quite sad. I think that the safety of children is of paramount importance, but I do feel that the risks involved in playing rugby at mini and youth level, etc., are outweighed by the benefits. I really believe in that. And this report is not something that's new.
It's not new. It's been rehashed again, isn't it?
I believe so, yeah. I believe that to be the case. And I think it's an attempt perhaps to influence the medical officers in the variety of regions throughout the country to go to the schools and prevent them playing contact rugby.
Well, she certainly has quite a senior position, a public health professor, to sort of influence that type of thing. But I found it quite interesting because I remembered this from when it first started doing the rounds some time ago. And I actually found online the first article I ever the first article I ever read, which was back in 2014. And I remembered, after watching her get pulled apart on telly by Piers Morgan and reading it in the paper, I remembered the article and I thought, now why did I dismiss it last time round? And I went back to find it, and I was quite amused to find out that the first time she started banging the drum about it was because her son had been injured, regretfully. And the article was quite passionate about schools, and I just don't get it. If she has any influence over schools, the articles are all exclusively about schools, but predominantly the rugby's played in clubs. You're going to get injured in a club, potentially, but statistically. Why not point the finger at clubs?
Well, I think the reason being is because there's a hold over the schools in terms of the local authorities and how you can influence the local authorities. Yeah. I do find it's, as I've said, the safety of children is of paramount importance. But I think rugby brings benefits. I think we're in an age where
character building.
I think there's the character building. I think on a health agenda, we have learned that our children, there's a high level of obesity. And this is one activity, amongst many, I accept that, where we can get children out playing something and doing something worthwhile. And I do feel that it's, as you said, it's character building. I think it teaches leadership. I think it builds up a team ethic, working together with other people and working in groups. And I think rugby provides all of that. And I do believe that the risk will be reduced if the players themselves are actually taught and coached well. The coaching, technically, that it's dealt with on a technical basis, and those coaches pay attention to how the tackle should be made, etc., and how you scrummage. And to be fair to the Rugby Football Union, and we gave them a bit of a kick in last week, but the one thing I would say is that I do feel, working with World Rugby, they've constantly emphasised the safety factors in coaching rugby amongst youngsters, and I do believe that they've made great strides forward in ensuring that those risks of injury are reduced.
Well, that's interesting because she actually insinuates in here that there's a lack of data and stuff to make firm decisions on. Well, in that case then, why are you banging your drum so heavily? But secondly, I know my physio, but I know many physios around the country are cooperating with the study at Bath University, the CRISP project. Have you seen that?
Yes, I do, yeah. And the clubs at all levels are asked to participate in that.
Yeah, and they're supplying massive amounts of data about all injuries, not just the top end ones.
Yeah.
Not just your concussions or your fractures, it's all injuries. And there's a massive buy-in. The data is there. And the CRISP project surely can't be a secret to her, but it's having great results that they are coming out with warm-up routines that prevent injury, both for children and adults. And it's been hand in hand with the RFU in creating the head case program about And you know, you can't even book on some RFU courses, safeguarding courses, or the Rugby Ready and all that sort of stuff, unless you've done a head case online course, awareness course.
Yeah.
So the awareness is massive, and you know the coaching is not so gladiatorial anymore. Back in the day, if you were doing tackling, it would be quite normal to have two squads of people running at each other full pelt and coming together like a car crash. You don't see that anymore. It's
no,
sort of
and again to the Rugby Union, you can go back to the 70s and 80s when there was a wonderful publication for the teaching and coaching of rugby for the preliminary coaching award, Better Rugby.
Yeah.
And if you remember that,
yes, I do.
That specifically took you through stages on how you should introduce and introduce tackling and introduce contact. And I think the RFU have always emphasised this need for confidence in contact, that the children have got to have confidence in what they're doing. That has to be delivered by the coach, that he's got to encourage that, he has to engender that. And I do feel that every effort is being made to improve levels of safety. I also feel, though, that the suggestion is that rugby becomes non-contact up to the age of 16.
In her
view. Now, in which instance, you will have basically a type of touch rugby, and I think there were two areas which I would be upset about, basically, in that the first would be that lack of contact, especially in areas like the scrummage, would
increase the danger.
I think increase the danger
Yeah.
when the players move up. So once they've reached 16 and go into a contact situation, they've got a hell of a lot of catching up to do. And I don't think it can be done. And if a player wants to leave school and join a club, he is going to be behind those players who have actually started playing at 8, have carried on playing up to the age of 16. And you still have players coming into the game relatively late. And I think that they will be behind. The other aspect is the scrum itself. It's highly technical, but rugby is a game for all shapes and sizes. And of course, there's a certain type of player that perhaps gravitates towards the front row, and those players are, wouldn't get involved in physical activity unless they had something like the scrummage, which engenders enthusiasm, and then you improve their skills around the field. A very good friend of mine, a player that I coached, said he wouldn't have played rugby if it hadn't been for the scrum. He would have actually just been sitting down on his backside playing on a computer. But it got him up, it got him out playing, and it was because of the physical aspect, the physical contact that he enjoyed, and especially learning about the technicalities of scrum. All that would be gone, and in a couple of years you'd be expected to coach all of that so that they could then progress into the senior game. And I think also, all you're doing with the statistics as regards injuries is moving them up the line. You're actually, instead of being under 13 or under 14s or 15s, it'll be under 18s, the injuries, the emphasis would be there, or more injuries than under 18 level.
She talks about giving the school kids' parents the choice or the information, but there is so much information out there, and the game itself is giving a choice, because touch is really very popular now.
Yeah, very much so.
For goodness sake, we've got an England touch team.
Yeah.
You've got sevens, you've got sort of hybrid versions of the games, 10s and all that sort of stuff. The choice is out there, and any parent that thinks, oh, my son's going to go to school, the only sport they can do is rugby, does that really happen that much anymore? It might do at some of your top-end private schools or something like that.
But I mean, to be fair to them, I mean, they give you a full range of sports. And no, I don't think it does. I think pupils are given a choice now, or they're given an introduction to a variety of games, and then they make that choice. Yeah. But I still believe the teaching and coaching is of a high level, and that is because of the direction that it's been led by the Rugby Football Union and by World Rugby.
And the other thing as well is, a few years ago, the RFU published a report, not about contact or injuries. The report was about the 4 very clear points at which we lose people to the game. And one of them was the under-9s age group when they come across contact.
Yes.
And that report was followed up by quite an extensive lot of coaching packages and ideas about how to be non-gladiatorial, to coach the contact area through way of fun and games.
Yes.
And I don't know whether that's plugged the leak from players leaving the game, but certainly when I walk around the park on a Sunday and look at that particular age group, all you can hear is laughing.
Yeah.
They're having a good time.
No, I think clubs do a grand job. I mean, at the Red Genzien Rams, we have our own accreditation process in addition to the RFU Awards, where we're looking at improving coaching technique and improving delivery with a specific emphasis on contact, on tackling, on technique in contact.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, we could ramble on about this all day. Going back last week and the week before, you mentioned the fact that I always look at the clubs that are coming up as the danger area. Certainly, in my opinion, anyway. But during the week, we've been looking at the yo-yo teams.
Yes.
The teams that go up, come down, go up, come down. That could be a combination of paying or whatever. But is there a skill to managing that process of going up and staying up?
I think there is. I think you have to really, think through the problem rather than to the problem. A cliche perhaps, but I think that you need to prepare yourself. It is in the leagues. As you go up, I think the challenge becomes greater, and I believe it is a step up. I think you really have to look at your players' skills levels to try and improve those. Certainly conditioning and strength levels, improve those aspects. Because you normally find that the pace of the game and the physicality of the game, when you go up a step, it goes up a step in terms of those parts of the game. You know, that it's a higher challenge.
And is it a time for the management team to be honest and say, we need to perhaps get some more weight in the second row, we need to look at personnel and recruit intelligently, or bring people in? Or
Yeah, I mean, that is always a difficult one. I think that what you need to be careful of is that you can't forget the players who've got you promotion.
Yeah.
They have actually won the league. They have gone into the league above, and it's on their efforts. So I think you need to be very careful on what you do, because you don't want to lose the team ethos, the team ethic, the team spirit.
Yeah.
Because often that can actually win you games, and you don't want to leave that out. I know when we went up with Rams, we first went into International 2. We got one or two new players in, but we found, and you also need an element of luck. We did find that the game was faster, it was far more physical. We found that, and we started getting injuries. Now, initially, we thought sufficient strength in depth, but that actually proved to be wrong, because we just went through a succession of injuries. And, you know, for 6 weeks, we found that a hard task indeed. It was a challenge to everybody, to the players, the coaches, the administrators. Once players started coming back, and we were fortunate enough to get one or two other players into the club, we began to find our feet, and we improved our playing record, and in that first season we finished in 8th place. So I do believe it can be done. I have no doubt about that. But I wouldn't panic into try and change the whole team. I think the life cycle of any team, it's an approximation. I would say it'd be about 5 years, and then age catches up with one or two players, family commitments or job commitments, and so there is a dropout, and then you've got to replace those players. I still believe that you try and do that internally through your club structures, youth structures, etc. You can also go to outside sources in terms of recruiting or looking at players who've played at a higher level, perhaps introduce one or two of them. But I would be very, very careful about making great changes. I think that could be detrimental.
I think the point you make about depth is really important, because a few seasons ago now, we came 3rd by a point, and the team was really ready to go up. And the reason why I was happy for that sort of ethos to go around was because we had depth. There was probably 90% of the second team players I'd happily swap into the first team. But that depth started to disappear with age, with injury, and so on, availability. And I've rapidly changed my mind. You know, you've got to manage the players' expectations because they were saying, right, we've got to get promoted this year. And it was sitting back privately thinking, actually, I'm not sure we're ready. You know, it's all very well getting catapulted up, but you are going to yo-yo if you haven't got that depth because of the attrition rate.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is difficult to manage, as I've said. I remember when I was coaching in Ireland, we got promotion into the top level of the Irish club leagues, and we had a very, very young, inexperienced side. But they played very well at the level we were at. We played some good rugby, and we won matches. We won up, and we immediately came down. But the following season, they matured. That's another aspect.
Yeah.
So we retained faith in youth, we went up and we stayed there comfortably. And so I think there are different aspects. But what you've got to do is, I think, be quite honest and identify where your strengths and where your weaknesses are.
Yeah, and be honest with yourself.
Yeah, I think so.
Talking about good rugby,
Yes.
have you had a look at the results at the weekend?
Oh, I have indeed, sir. And talking about sides who were promoted, and we were talking them up last week, especially in the London League. Tring, Guernsey, and Sidcup occupying. Well, Sidcup were first, Guernsey second, and Tring third. They all lost last weekend, and Barnes now have gone to the top of London, the southeastern London League. So that was a kiss of death on them. There were also cases of sides losing their unbeaten records. In National One, the two sides have actually maintained those. Coventry had a big win over Esher, 61 points to 26. And the news on the street is that they weren't particularly happy with that. They think they can play better. So God knows what they're going to be like when they get going. Darlington had a hard fought game against Caldy, but again managed to win that and hold actually top place in that league. In the north, again, there was a similar story with the two top sides, Stourbridge and Birmingham Solihull winning. Stourbridge and Tyndale winning, and therefore retaining their positions at the top. In National 2, Cinderford nearly lost their
unbeaten run. Yeah.
Their unbeaten run, but I was there at the Old Bath Road. I mean, Rams were desperately unlucky. I mean, it was heartbreaking. It was a cracking game. It's one of the best games I'd seen for years. And but they went down 36-37 with the final kick of the game, a controversial penalty, which I think we're still arguing about in the clubhouse now. But that was that. In the regional leagues, in the southwest, Dings remain the only unbeaten side now. They beat Newton Abbot, who have been clocking up a lot of points, and themselves are unbeaten. So Dings are at the top now. They reached the playoff finals last year, losing to Wimbledon. So, you know, they're looking perhaps to get one step further and actually win it outright. And for them, that looks quite good. In the Northern League, it's Lymm and Preston Grasshoppers who remain unbeaten.
Yeah.
Lymm are at the top by virtue of bonus points. And so they're beginning to control that. And in the Midlands, the remaining two unbeaten sides were Peterborough and Birmingham Solihull. They both won at the weekend, scored a few points, and they're now leading the way in that league. Coming up this weekend, I'm always saying get out and support your clubs on a Saturday. There's some great games now in National 2 South. Cinderford take on Chinner. Cinderford unbeaten. Chinner drew their very, very first game of the season, and that should be a cracker. In London Regional and the South East League, Barnes play Sidcup. So Barnes are now top of the league. Sidcup are in third place. And then an all Devon derby, Newton Abbot, who have lost one game, against Exmouth, who have lost one game. That should be a cracking match there. So enjoy your rugby this weekend and get out and support your local club.
Cheers.